Welcome to Calls. This is the 2021 John Deere Classic Data Dive. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to smash that like button, especially for the win this past week. Subscribe to the channel. Support's always appreciated. Decent little show for you tonight. We're going to see if we can't make it back-to-back winners. Still riding the high a little bit from the weekend. The first win that I've had putting my projections live on the internets. Like I said, we're going to be going into the data this tonight for the John Deere Classic in Silvis, Illinois at TBC Deere Run. I've looked through the field this week, and it's not a strong field. The Scottish Open, which is traditionally the week before the Open Championship, is happening this week. So most of the big name players are playing in the Scottish Open. You've got a couple of names that are playing in the John Deere Classic, and that's about it. So the field is pretty weak. It's pretty weak, just to be fair. But we're still going to see if we can find some hidden gems. We'll get into the DFS tactics on Wednesday, which tune in for that show. It's always a good one. But a couple of other announcements. As always, statistics are provided by FantasyNational.com. Amazing resource. Go check it out. Highly worth the investment. And the other one being that I am going to kind of take a look into a mixed model on there. Been playing around with it. It still says it's in beta, but it's been pretty good. I've been trying it out with mixed results. We are going to look at DraftKings Sportsbook odds. Full disclosure, there's not a lot of value that I see this week. So I'm going to take it a very light week, just because the Open Championship is next week, and I have a lot of money in my pocket, and I'm going to try not to burn it this week. Having said that, let's see if we can dig into some data, find some hidden gems, or find ways to give all the winnings back that we won this weekend. And when we switch over and take a look at the homepage for John Deere Classic at FantasyNational.com, Daniel Berger is your overwhelming favorite at 10-1. You've got Brian Harmon and Sung J M at 14-1. And then Russell Henley at 18-1. So there's Berger, there's Harmon, Sung J, and Russell Henley down here at 10th by strokes gained total. Those are all of your quote-unquote heavy favorites, anybody under 20-1. And as much of a Daniel Berger believer I am, I will generally have some bets on him in bigger tournaments, as he usually comes in bigger situations. 10-1 is just too short for me. It's just too short for me. Give me one moment here, as I'm also going to remind you, jump into chat live. As always, if you're live, interact with me. Ask me some questions. I want to hear from you. Sorry, I'm getting all my stuff situated here. Jump in chat. Let me know. What do you want to look at? How'd you do this weekend? How do you think you're going to do this weekend? What's a lean that you have? What's a fade you have? If you're not watching live, why aren't you watching live? But comment below. What are you going to be looking at? What do you want to see? Who's your early lean on the Open Championship and the British Open? So jump into chat. Hopefully you followed with me and bet some Cameron Davis this weekend. Excited for that. I hit some other top 20s. Alex Norn was a pretty good hit. I had a top 20 on Cameron Davis. Obviously that cash, but I had a pretty good week, and trying not to toot my own horn, but the DFS side was successful as well. I had a lot of exposure to Patton Kazire, Maverick McNeely. So it was a good weekend, and let's see if we can't find some more hidden sleepers here like Cam Davis. which unfortunately Cam Davis isn't a sleeper anymore, as he is down to 28-1. But of the 4 favorites, I just don't see a lot of value there. I like Sung Jae as a player. I believe in the talent, but his game is not at 18-1. It's just not telling me it's at 18-1. He has been better of late. The form has been pretty good lately. 3 straight made cuts, one of them being a major. You've got the top 10 last week at the Rocket Mortgage. Again, I just don't see 18-1. I just don't. Especially since he had been pretty volatile the weeks leading up to this form. Very good PGA, really bad Charles Schwab. Indifferent Memorial. Wells Fargo was an absolute nightmare. So I don't know where his game is. Now the last 5 has been pretty good, but I'm not. 14-1 is just too small for me. It's just not enough for me. The risk isn't there for me. Brian Harman. This should be a good course for Brian Harman. It's on the shorter side. You got a lot of wedges in your hands, but at 14-1, I can't get there either. So of the 4 heavy favorites, I'm out. I'm out completely. I don't see it. I don't see it for those 4. We go into the middle tier. You've got Streelman at 25, Cam Davis at 28, Norn at 28. I mean, if you want to believe Cameron Davis can go back to back, by all means. The statistics say that he's going to do. He should do pretty well this week again. He's 9th in strokes gained total. He wasn't great around the green, or he hasn't been great around the green, and he was actually fairly mediocre in the win last week around the green. But I'm never going to bet somebody to go back to back. Garrick Higo did it earlier this year over in the European Tour. And if Cameron Davis wins, all power to him. I won't be a part of that hit. It's so difficult to win on the PGA Tour. To do it back to back in 2 straight weeks is asking a lot. It's asking a lot. There is one factor that is helping Cam Davis in that the way that this course sets up, at least the way I see it, is very similar to Detroit Golf Club at Rocket Mortgage where he just won. There's a lot of similarities. It's not the same. So there's a bit of a difference there, and I'm not going to bet somebody to win back to back. But DFS wise, sure. I think he's going to have a great tournament. I'm not going to bet him at 28. Zach Johnson 33, Siwoo Kim 33, Glover, Neely, Merritt, Kevin Na, Seamus Power, Aaron Wise all at 40. Again, I just don't see a lot of value in there. People that are ranked fairly high on the board, Troy Merritt have had a fantastic Rocket Mortgage, saved however many pars to keep pushing Cam Davis in the playoff. I don't have a strong lean this week. Last week, I had strong leans obviously on Cameron Davis, on Cameron Tringali. I had a strong lean on Christopher Ventura, which I was hoping you all would forget at 350-1. But hey, if it's a bomb and it comes in, whatever. But clearly it didn't come in. He missed the cut. But I really don't have any strong leans this week, especially at the top of the board. Like Johnny Vegas, he's rating out as, 5th in strokes gained total over the last 50 rounds. But, there are some holes in his game. He's not been putting well. His short game is cover your eyes bad. And we're on bent greens here at TPC Deere Run. Yes, he came second at the Palmetto, but he made the cut at the U.S. Open. If you make the cut at the major, you're doing something right. Lackluster performance at the Charles Schwab, top 10 at the Byron Nelson, but I mean, it was all in his forte, really, in tee to green. Middling results 2 previous tournaments. I mean, he's made the cut in 6 straight. That's saying something. But I mean, he can go ice cold with the putter. And putting is going to be pretty important this week, as it is every week. But especially last week, when you looked at the graphs of the course breakdown, putting was such an astronomically more important statistic than approach, which is not common. Absolutely not common. Maybe even a bit of an outlier. And this week, while putting is almost even with approach, we're going back to a bit of a more normal distribution of approach outweighing putting by a slight margin. So you're going to still have to putt pretty well. And on somebody that goes ice cold like that, I mean, this is almost the Keegan Bradley effect. I mean, even when he's having good weeks, he's only gaining a stroke and a half. So that puts a lot of pressure on the rest of his game. Now, fortunately, sometimes he can just light it up off the tee. I mean, just go ham. But you're putting a lot of pressure on all facets of your game other than your putter if you're not putting well. And I understand that putting's a fickle statistic. I'm always a proponent of that. But I also say that when somebody shows you a historical norm, Johnny Vegas is not a good putter. Just flat out not a good putter. So it gives me a lot of pause for Johnny Vegas, and him being 5th in strokes gained total. I don't want to call it empty. I certainly don't want to call it empty, but it is someone I'm shying away from. He's at 50-1. If you want to believe in the tee to green and think that he's actually going to have a good week with the putter, go ahead. I won't get there, but it's your call. It's your choice. It's your, you see something out of that. I just won't get there. There are a couple of leans that I have, I guess, on outright wins this week, but I don't feel great about it. No heavy intuitions like I had with Cam Davis and Cameron Tringali and such last week. The first one that came to my mind was Hank Lebioda. In a fantastic tournament this past week. Bring him up here. Bent is his best surface for putting. Great recent form, even back to the last 10. Great recent form. He's somebody that can go crazy with the putter. I mean, he can go ice cold too, sure, absolutely. But he doesn't. He relies on his putter, which gives, usually would give me pause, but he has shown a baseline for being pretty good. His last 20 tournaments, he's at least been average. And lately, he's dialed in with the putter. So at 55-1, I think you could do worse. And this line has moved considerably because when it opened this morning, it was 66-1. And again, I didn't pull the trigger. I just I might get shorter odds, but I want to see how the market reacts to initial lines. So, and I hadn't went crazy deep into a data model yet. So I kind of hesitated, and it's already down to 55-1. So a lot of people seem to be on Hank Lebioda this week, and that was my first initial lean. But again, I don't feel great about it at 55-1. And then the second one that I've kind of taken a look at, and I'm not terribly confident in it, a whole lot less than Hank Lebioda, is Denny McCarthy. And Denny McCarthy does not look to be someone that you would target, especially since he's only 47th in strokes gained total. But the way this course plays, you're going to have to putt, and it plays pretty well around the green. It's a short course, and when we start breaking down the course in the bent greens, which Denny McCarthy clearly plays well, the style of approaches you have to hit, mainly the 125 to 150 range, which we broke down in the initial research show, which if you didn't watch or haven't seen the initial research show, what are you doing? If you're live, watch it after this. If you're watching this video after it's been live, pause now, go check it out, then come back. But definitely Denny McCarthy does not have great form right now, and there's no denying that. Bad Rocket Mortgage, very mediocre Travelers, 2 missed cuts. I mean, he's not in good form. Again, this is a bit of a gut feeling, but I think Denny McCarthy is going to have a decent week, and is decent enough value that he's worth a wager if you want to. Again, this is probably conjecture on my part, especially because I'm going to be so light in the betting this week with the Open next week. I'm trying to have the money at least simmer in the pocket, maybe not burn all the way through it. As long as it can just get a nice little simmer there, I'll be okay. But when we start, like I said, when we start breaking down start breaking down the course, I think Denny McCarthy is going to pop in a couple of these models that will give you a decent reason to back him a little bit at 90 to 1. Honestly, beyond that, I don't see a lot. I mean, Vincent Whaley is somebody that has been playing very well lately. Down here at the bottom, I mean, he's 27th in strokes gained total the last 50 rounds. I mean, he's been in decent form, made the cut at the Rocket Mortgage. I had a top 20 on him. He was threatening Sunday early for that and then kind of fell apart. 2 missed cuts, but before that, he had been on a pretty good little run there of solid made cuts. I won't say anything outstanding, but, top 30s, top 55s, and top 15 at the alternate event Puerto Rico. So he had been in good form, and then he's kind of hit the skids a little bit, mainly with his approaches. And his irons can go hot and cold for sure. So Vincent Whaley, somebody at 100 that might be worth a look. Mark Anderson is another person at 125 who very, very sneakily had a strong Rocket Mortgage. He was tied for 8th. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Had a very, very good week at the Rocket Mortgage. He's 125 to 1, but I mean, there's a lot of red in these charts. There's a lot of red. I don't know if I can get there, especially, looking back here from mid-February all the way back to the swing portion of the season in November. I mean, there's a lot of MCs there, a lot of missed cuts. And even the cuts he made prior to this week were very mediocre. Now, if you want to believe in the very, very recent form of last week and maybe he's going to ride something, sure, at 125 to 1, I won't back it. But hey, I'm throwing out darts here because I just don't have a lot of strong feelings in the outright betting market. Like I said, I lean right now at Lebiota at 55. I'll take pretty strong consideration at Denny McCarthy at 90. But let's see if we can't dig into this a little bit. I'll show you my data model that I've built here. And again, as always, I tweak this and change things throughout the week. But right now, I've got off the tee at 5%. I'm always a strokes gained approach believer or backer. Normally I have it at 25% because it's still a fairly even distribution between approach and putting. I set it at 20, short game 5, putting at 15. Like last week was known to be an easy course. minus 23 and minus 25 had won the Rocket Mortgage prior 2 years. So it was an easy course. It was deemed easy. You got to get birdies. You got to get eagles. So I've upped the weight again this week for birdies or better, because this is another similarly easy course. Winning scores here have been anywhere between 19 and 27 under. The historic cut line has been as low as 3 or 4 under. It tends to be -2, which is easy by PGA Tour standards. So I've got birdies or better at 15%, eagles at 5, because the 3 par 5s are attackable. 2 of them are under 550 yards. So, and one is an eagle rate of 4%. That is a very, very easy hole. So I want to see who is adept at getting eagles on par 5s, or sometimes holing out, because there's also a drivable par 4 on this course as well. Driving distance at 10, strokes gained par 5 at 15. I want to see who takes advantage of par 5s, because if you're not scoring on the par 5s this week, you're in a lot of trouble. And then, as we looked at in the initial research show, the highest percentage of approach shots at TPC Deere Run come from 125 to 150. So there's the I will say my first initial model, or the base model that I kind of went with. And another reason why I don't have any strong leans is because it's rather chalky at the top. You can see 1, 2, and 3. 10 to 1, 28 to 1, but I will never bet somebody to go back to back. If he does, fantastic. If you back him, great. Brian Harman 14. Streelman, I believe, is at 25. Yeah, 25 to 1. Solid player. I think that's just too short of a price. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, in this field, maybe it's not. Siwoo at 33. Patton Kizzire, who had a fantastic Sunday, he is at 45. So there's a little bit of a lean there, I guess. So again, rather chalky up top, but here is, over the last 50 rounds in my model, who rates out the best. Let's narrow it down to the last 36, because that's what generally the baseline I use is 36. 50 can get some older data, especially for people who don't play often. I like to use last 36. And again, it is just more and more chalk. Berger, Davis, Streelman, Harman. That's one of the reasons why I was high on Leviota, is he kind of jumps up of the more recent form, obviously. Patton Kizzire, Pat Perez, and he is at 50 to 1. Seamus Power, who had a pretty darn good Rocket Mortgage in himself, he tied for eighth as well. He's been on a good little run here, 4 straight top 20s for Seamus Power. Off the tee is not good. He is not good with the driver, but he's in really good form. So Seamus Power is somebody to kind of take a look at, and he is sitting at 40 to 1. I believe he opened at 50 to 1. So a lot of people are backing Seamus Power this week, and based on the statistics, I can understand it for sure. But those are your top 10, and other than Lebiota, there was not a lot of strong leans there. Maybe Kizzire, maybe, but Seamus Power, Roger Sloan, Siwoo Kim, Troy Merritt just outside of it. Troy Merritt's a bit of an outlier here, and we're gonna actually do something that I haven't done live in these shows yet. We're gonna look at the leaderboard from last week at the Rocket Mortgage, especially because I think it plays similarly to this week. And we're going to see who was kind of a mirage, who gained so many strokes putting or out of their career norms, and what you can see either, maybe somebody bounces back or somebody falls back, to earth or regresses to the mean is the statistical jargon that is used. So based on my model, there's for the last 36 rounds. Because this is an easy course, one of the first things that I wanted to look at was how, based on those same percentages, 15% birdies are better, 5% off the tee, 20% approach, and whatnot, how these players play on easy courses. And again, because adding to the fact that I don't have any strong leans, Berger, Davis, Sepp Straka, who missed the cut last week on a course that he had traditionally played very, very well on. So that gives me a bit of a pause. He is not in good form at all. He had a very good Traveler, so a lot of, myself included, thinking, all right, well, he just had a very good tournament, come into a course that he really likes, he should do pretty well. Nope. Nope. So, the Palmetto, bad. Memorial, terrible. Charles Schwab, bad. So, Sepp Straka, if you believe in him maybe bouncing back, he's sitting at 80-1. Yeah, I don't think he's going to bounce back. But maybe that's why I only hit 1 out of every 6,000 bets. Chesson Hadley kind of pops here on easy courses, which is interesting. Give me a second. I'll find his odds. No, wrong one. Hadley. He's sitting at 90-1. I don't know. Not in good form. Bent's his worst putting surface. Mediocre Rocket Mortgage. Bad at the Travelers. He did tie for second at the Palmetto. 4 missed cuts before that. So I don't. Again, this goes back to the intro. This is just not a strong field. It is just not a strong field. You don't have a lot of bigger names here. I don't have a lot of strong leans. Yeah, I'm not feeling Hadley. There's Kazarigan, Harmon, Kevin Na, who generally plays easier courses well. Siwoo, Harry Higgs, Henley, Noren, Vegas, Ventura. Hey, my guy Ventura that shit the bed at 350-1. Maybe I can throw him back in there. I don't think he's 350-1 though. Chris Ventura, 250-1. Hey, no. I might play him in some DFS, but at 250-1, I don't think I can get there on. It's kind of like the Max Homa I've had for the past couple of weeks, just a jaded lover thing. Who knows? Maybe I'll throw a small bet on him just for old time's sake, see if I can't rekindle some old flame for Christopher Ventura. But I don't feel great about it. Maverick McNeely is also somebody that I've kind of had an eye on the outright betting scene. He's never been good around the green. A decent Rocket Mortgage, top 30 at the Travelers, top 20 at the Charles Schwab. Didn't play terrible at the PGA, but missed the cut at Wells Fargo. But the game is kind of there. And of course, clearly he is, popping on these easy models. He's at 40-1. Again, too short for my liking, but I can understand why you would want to back Maverick McNeely. So there's the easy filter. And I also want to look at bent greens. And we're basically going to just focus on the putting for bent greens. We'll look at a longer term baseline, and we're going to look at recent, who is putting the daylights out on bent greens. So this is for the last 36 rounds on bent greens. The putting, you've got Andres Romero, and then Denny McCarthy, Aaron Badley, Andrew Putnam, Pat Perez, Chris Ventura, Zach Johnson, Charles Howell, Sepp Straka, and Johnson Wagner, your top 10 for strokes gained putting on bent greens. There are a lot of high prices there. The reason they're high prices is the rest of their game, except for Andres Romero. What in the world? He's all green here. That's interesting. Okay, so his best putting surface is bent, clearly. But look at this form. Holy shitbags, no. No. Oh, God. I mean, misses the cut at these alternate events, and some of them from 2020. No. No, thank you. Actually, let's go back to the regular page just to make sure we're looking at this right. Strokes gained for bent and putting. Yep. Andres Romero, Denny McCarthy, Aaron Badley, Andrew Putnam, Pat Perez. Pat Perez is interesting. He made the cut this past week, but I believe it was a fairly middling finish. No, he tied for 14th. Was not good off the tee at all, and putted the daylights out. So this is when I was talking about just a bit ago, looking into the leaderboard from this past weekend and seeing who some outliers were. That's one of them. That's a perfect example of an outlier. Pat Perez, while a good putter, is not going to gain 9 strokes on the field every week in putting. So I would venture to guess that tied for 14th is going to come down this week, given the relative norm of his baseline elsewhere. I mean, he had 6.5 strokes gained total and almost 9 putting. So he was god awful. I mean, atrocious in the rest of his game at the Rocket Mortgage. And he saved himself on the greens by tying 14th. I'm not going to have any Pat Perez exposure this week just because of that outlier right there. Ventura, God, that's a whole ex-lover thing that I'm not going to be able to get rid of. Zach Johnson, Charles Howell, Seth Starter John. Again, there's Kazire, so he's kind of popping on a couple of models. Noren's at 33. Might take it. No, excuse me, 28 to 1. Maybe worth a look because he generally plays easy courses pretty well. Harmon, Bazzelli, Berger. There's McNeely again. So Bo Hostler's a name that kind of keeps coming up on these easy courses. So again, I just don't feel great about it on an outright betting angle. Sorry, words left me. I'm not going to look at course length. If there's anything I would look at, it'd be less than 7,200. And again, we covered this in the initial research show, so go check it out. This is just over 7,200 yards. I think it's measured at 7,223 or 32, somewhere around there. Just over 7,200. So honestly, I would probably filter on this if I were going to. I'm not going to this week, but I would here just because it's so close to the cutoff. And the architect for TBC Deere Run is D.A. Wabring, and this is the only course in Fantasy National database that is D.A. Wabring, I believe. Clearly not Pete Dye, Nicholas, or Ross, so not going to have a filter for architect. So a lot of it, what I'm getting at, or what I'm looking for this week, are easy courses, bent greens. Green speeds here have been fast, average to fast. So I don't feel comfortable filtering on fast because sometimes they do roll average here. But I guess one of the things we can look at here, easy and bent. And let's see what some of these courses are. So you have Aronimick. I don't know why Augusta's popping for score relative to par. That seems odd. Cherry Hills. Colonial. That makes a little bit of sense. Conway Farms, which I believe is the Sanders. I'm not sure. I know it's a fall event. Conway Farms. Cricket Stick Detroit, which we just left, coming from the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Glen Abbey, Liberty National, Muirfield, which is Jack's Place, the Memorial. Robert Trent Jones, 9 Bridges. TBC Boston. There's TBC Deere Run. River Highlands, Scottsdale. So I just don't see a lot of correlation there. That's why I'm kind of looking at the at last week's performances or performance just to kind of get a gauge because I'm seeing some similarities there. So we did a little bit of this on the initial research show. Here are the recent results for the players in the field, just to kind of see who's in good form lately. Aaron Wise has made a couple of cuts here. You got Russell Henley. Of course, Cameron Davis won last week but didn't play before then. Brian Harmon's in great form. Nothing worse than than the top 20. But at 14 to 1. No, thank you. Let's see. Seamus Powers in good form. We talked about that a little bit. Nothing worse than the top 20. He's at 40 to 1. So Seamus Powers, somebody that you can kind of gravitate towards. Maverick McNeely, somebody that I was kind of leaning on there. He is at 40 to 1 as well. Troy Merritt has made some cuts and then tied for second. Obviously last week got in the playoff and lost to Cam Davis. Top 10 at the Charles Schwab, so he's in decent form. Hank Lebioda, 2 top 10s the past couple of weeks. He's been my strong lean early in the week. Johnny Vegas, good form. Kyle Stanley has made some cuts, middling performances, but at Charles Schwab he had a top 10, top 25 from Bo Hostler. Bo Hostler is somebody who's been popping up a lot on these statistical models. And he is sitting at, my goodness, I'm already in the hundreds. Well, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. Where is Bo Hostler? Oh, I passed him. 70 to 1. So, I don't know. 71 seems a little short for Bo Hostler, but let's take a look. Well, Bent is clearly his best putting surface, so that's a check mark. He's in decent form. Not historic. Well, he's been historically a good putter. He has not been a good putter lately. Was decent last week. He gained a little bit on the field, but he gained in every category, so that's a positive. That's another check mark. Top 10 at the Travelers. He was very good, and he lost a little bit on approach. Palmetto, he was striking the shit out of the ball, just didn't putt very well. Maybe Bo Hostler is a name to kind of look at this week. Huh. So there you go. I now that I'm digging into the data, diving a little bit, maybe Bo Hostler somebody to take a look at. So yeah, there's let's sort this by strokes gained total of your past 6 events. So Hank Lebioda is actually the number 1 by strokes gained total for the past 6 events. Brian Harmon, Seamus Power, Strillman, who missed the cut at the Travelers, didn't play last week. Bo Hostler, Noren, Merritt, Kramer Hickok, who lost in the duel with Harris English in the forever playoff. Chez Reavie. Yeah, Chez Reavie. He missed the cut last week, but was in decent form the week before. Or not the weeks, but the weeks leading up to it. He's at 55 to 1. Pat Perez, Berger, McNeely, M, Henley. So, yeah. Interesting. Cameron Davis all the way down here. Probably that miscut's hurting him there on the strokes gained. So, Bo Hostler is a name. Seamus Power is also a name that's been popping. I mentioned how Pat Perez was that outlier performance in the massive strokes gained putting. Troy Merritt's kind of the same way. So let's take a look at the leaderboard in strokes gained last week, and let's figure out and see if anybody was a complete outlier to either their career norms or something that you just don't expect to happen again. And the first thing I like to do is sort by the strokes gained putting. And if somebody is just astronomically so high in the strokes gained putting, then I feel like they're going to regress back to me. Even if they say Pat Perez gains 3 strokes putting, not 8.7, he probably finishes somewhere in 40th, and it's not all that much to write home about. Same with Troy Merritt. I mean, Troy Merritt had a good week total. I mean, all the way around, but 7 strokes on the green. I don't think that's going to happen again. Mackenzie Hughes didn't play well, putted great, saved his week. Lebiota was good everywhere else, except off the tee, but he was kind of field average, a little less. You could argue that he was, saved himself with the putter, but Lebiota has shown that he is a good putter, at least in recent form, and long term, he's not an abject failure on the green. I mean, the past 4 tournaments he's gained, I'll round this up to 3. I know it's not quite 3. But 3 strokes on the greens or better. So in his past 4 events, he is on fire with the flat stick. Now, I am willing to accept the fact or will not be surprised if he comes out and has a -5 tournament on the greens. It happens. But 5 of his past 6, he's gained 3 strokes or more on the greens. And when he lost it a lot. The rest of his game has been pretty darn good, with the exception of his irons at the Palmetto, but his irons have been good otherwise. Off the tee has always been hit and miss for Hank Lebiota. He's not known as an off the tee player. This is why my early lean has been Hank Lebiota. He plays easy courses pretty well. I like Lebiota this week. I don't have a strong desire to bet him at 55-1, but if I were going to make a win bet, it would be on Lebiota, and I still haven't decided. My full betting card will be Wednesday at the end of the DFS Tactics show. I will have a card put together, but it'll be light, I'm pretty sure, unless I start finding a lot of things through my research in the week. But I always like to look at this and see, who is away from their career norms or just complete outliers. Somebody like Jason Kokrak had a fantastic week. Atrocious on the greens. And he still finished 12th, or tied for 12th. Not a good putter regardless, but don't let this graph fool you. This is, negative 0.08. So he's losing a 10th a stroke around. That's not a lot. It's not Ben On levels. It's not Keegan Bradley levels. So, and then in the past 20, he's been pretty darn good on the greens. He just had a bad week. It happens. And he's still tied for 12th. So if the rest of the game stays where it is, which I don't think he's in the field, but he's somebody to definitely look at for the Open Championship. This was an outlier. If you were playing this week, it would be somebody that I would consider heavily, especially considering the form. He missed the cut at the U.S. Open, in which he was awful. There's just no other way to put it. He won the Charles Schwab, made the cut at the PGA, middling finish, top 15, Masters, made the cut still, but top 10, and made cuts before then. So Kokrak's in great form, never good around the greens, but last week was an outlier given the recent putting form. So that's somebody that when I talk about outlier performances, he played great. Ball struck the shit out of it. I mean, his irons were good, off the tee was good, around the green was good, just couldn't putt. Keegan Bradley played fantastic golf, couldn't putt. The reason why I don't think that's too terribly much of an outlier, he's a traditionally bad putter. So this is the difference between Jason Kokrak and Keegan Bradley. I'm willing to give Kokrak the outlier tag because he's shown, at least in recent form, that he's been a very good putter. And everyone has bad weeks, and that happened to be a bad week. Keegan Bradley has shown he's just flat not a good putter. He's just, over time, he just is not very good with the flat stick. 4.5 is bad, but you look here, he's lost 7. He's lost 7 down here in 2020, 4.5, almost 5, almost 3. There are some greens in here too, but look at the past 4 positive performances that Keegan Bradley's had on the green. Less than 1, less than 1, less than 1, less than 1. So this is somebody who is not a good putter, and even when they have a good week, a great week by Keegan Bradley standards is just a good week. It's not somebody I want to back when putting's important. When putting's not important, Keegan Bradley's somebody to look at. But just giving you an idea of why I say this is not an outlier, and that is. And of course, you can do that with all of these, like Hank Lebioda. This is not an outlier. We've seen that he is just not very good off the tee. Honestly, it might be a bit of an outlier in the fact that he only lost 0.2 of a stroke, not more. Seamus Power, we've looked at. Mark Anderson. So the big telling thing is who saved themselves on the green a lot this week, because performance with the putter can hide a lot of flaws. Clearly it did with Pat Perez. Clearly it did with Pat Perez. Merritt, who had a very good tournament anyway, but he was spectacular on the greens. You kind of expect that to come down a little bit. Mackenzie Hughes. I think Mackenzie Hughes is actually somewhat a fairly good putter, though. Yeah. So, that's much less of an outlier, but it's still an outlier because you don't expect him to gain 6.5. 3.5, sure. Field average, half a stroke, 1. Yeah, sorry. 1.5. So, yeah, 6.5, a little bit less of an outlier, but still an outlier. But let's go back and look at the other end. Who had just an atrocious week on the greens and maybe either missed a cut or had a terrible finish or a middling finish, but played great other than the green and his performance on the green. Ryan Brehm is one name that kind of comes up here. He ball struck the hell out of it. Very good off the tee and approach. Was not very good with the wedges and around the green, and an abject, absolute, total close your eyes and look away failure on the greens. Is he in the field this week? He is. He's at 250 to 1. That is, I'm not advocating an outright win bet. That's a bet that for a top 20 or a top 30, there is reason to believe. Let's look at his recent form other than last week. So his recent form has been pretty bad. Pretty bad. Made the cut last week and then 6 missed cuts before that. So looking into this, it makes me shy away from making a bet on Ryan Brehm. I'm probably butchering the hell out of that. But I expect his performance to improve. He might not make the cut because he's probably not going to gain 3.7 off the tee or 4 on approaches. As we saw, he's just not in good form totally. But he shouldn't lose 7.5 strokes this week putting. So if he stays positive in this and comes back to field average with the putter, he's probably somebody who's going to, he might not win the tournament, but I wouldn't be surprised if he were top 30 or so. Minus 7.5 strokes. You're pulling a Sergio and putting with your eyes closed at that point. Tom Hoagie was middling, except for, he was pretty bad off the tee too. That's why he missed the cut. Ben on, hilarious. He's just an abject failure on the greens. He's just terrible on the greens. Keegan, we talked about. I'm much more. I don't want to give this the outlier tag because he's just a bad putter overall. Matthew Wolff is somebody that I would consider this an outlier. Played pretty darn good. I mean, he wasn't great. He only gained a half stroke off the tee, only a half a stroke around the green. He struck his irons great. Just couldn't make a putt. Still made the cut. He's never been good around the green and actually gained strokes. So you would expect this number to actually go back red. And he's been kind of whack-a-mole. Volatile is another word, if you will, off the tee lately. So maybe that is in line with his performances. He's just been kind of all over the place. Let's see. Sebastian Munoz was really good across the board. Just didn't putt well. So I really like going to this if I really want to dig in and see who had a terrible week on the greens or a fantastic week and covered their flaws. So this just gives you an idea. Like there's Kokrak. I mean, Kokrak played fantastic. Ball struck the living hell out of it and just didn't putt well and still tied for 12th. Not in the field this week, but I mean that just tells you that that's somebody that you would want to target this week if he were playing this week. You would want to target him because you'd have to expect this number to come back to norms. Now he might not gain as much in these categories, but we saw Jason Kokrak earlier. He's in great form. He's been in great form with the putter. So that is somebody I would want to target. Chesson Hadley looks like he's another one that had a pretty darn good week and just didn't putt well. So he's another name to look at for this week. Chesson Hadley, I think we looked earlier. He was it 90 to 1? Yep. Chesson Hadley was 90 to 1. So that's somebody you might be willing to target for that. Max Homa is another one that played pretty darn well. Just didn't make a putt. So again, I don't want to go through every scenario there, but I really like coming to this tab here or this breakdown from the previous week, especially if it's a similar style course, which this is, and who putted well, who didn't putt well, who didn't strike their irons well, or who did strike their irons well. Generally speaking, if you're striking your irons well, your game's in a pretty decent form, and the rest will come around. At least I tend to believe that. Kevin Kisner is somebody that I kind of want to look at coming up in events. I don't believe he's not in the field this week, but Kevin Kisner's been in some very, very good form lately. Solid on bent. So, I mean, this is one cap in the feather, or stash it away in your memory banks for a couple of weeks. He's silently been in pretty good form. He doesn't get talked about a lot, but I mean he made the cut even at the U.S. Open, 2 top 10 finishes. Kisner's back on the rise. At least I think so. So I just kind of like coming here, looking at this, and seeing what the outliers are or were in the previous week. But here's the leaderboard from this past week. The course played 7,200 to 7,400. Typically, it was easy to hit fairways there. Round 3 and 4 was actually difficult to hit fairways. But again, that was last week. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're here for the John Deere. But again, that was it shows you a pretty good look at what some outlier performances were, what happened the week prior, who's in good form, who just had a bad week, with their irons, with their driver, with their putter. So again, at least outright betting wise, my early lean is Lebioda. I did find some interesting names there. Seamus Power, I'll have to take a look into a little bit further. I like Sung Jae. It's just at 14 to 1. Not even 18, 14 to 1. I just can't get there. We talked about Lebiota. I can't get there on Vegas. Whaley is... I'm waffling Whaley. Kazire's been a name that has kind of popped up a little bit. I like McNeely. I don't know if I like 40 to 1, but I like McNeely. So I do like Denny McCarthy. So I think we mentioned he was at what, 70, 80 to 1, 90 to 1. Hey. So those are my two early leans. Hank Lebiota and Denny McCarthy, at least for outright betting. Remember to tune in Wednesday for the DFS Tactics Show as I continue to dig into the data, really try to parse the information. Not a lot to go on this week, and especially with a weak field. Just it's a DA wavering design. There's just not a lot of courses that match or that are DA wavering courses that we can look at. So we're not exactly comparing apples to apples here, and quite honestly, after such a high of hitting this past week, and with a major coming up, perhaps I'm just not so much into the outright betting card this week. DFS wise, I'll absolutely get into that with the prices and lineup generator and who's chalky and who's a pivot and all that stuff. From the outset, I told you I don't have a lot of strong feelings this week on outright betting cards. But if you do, by all means, comment below. Let me know. What are you thinking? Who's your lean this week, or somebody you might want to fade in betting, or you don't think is going to be that good this week, or maybe you want to get a jump on the DFS? Shoot me a comment. As always, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. All the support is appreciated. And until next time, may all your bets be profitable.